Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Small Caps. Great to have your company. Well, Perth-based lithium refiner, or converter, if you will, Lithium Universe is one step closer to building its refinery in Quebec, Canada, following the results of its pre-feasibility study. The PFS shows that the company, which operates via ticker code LU7, meets all targets across financial, design and output parameters. Tell us more with this breaking news. I'm joined by company CEO Alex Hanley. Alex, good to speak to you on Small Caps once again.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, a big moment for the company as we tick off this big milestone that we're all very excited about. PFS, as you can see, ticks a lot of the boxes that we've been crowing about for the last couple of months.
Yeah, before we dive deep into that, Alex, let's give us a quick overview of the project and where it sits in Quebec, for anyone who may not have heard about the company and the project to date.
The project is located in Bécancour in Quebec, just situated between Montreal and Quebec City. Most importantly, Bécancour and the wider Trois-Rivières region is becoming somewhat of a battery hub for Quebec. The battery hub itself is host to GM POSCO, as well as Nemaska Lithium and Ford Eco Pro. So there's a growing number of key names within this park. The park itself has got all the utilities, natural gas, green hydroelectricity, and all the right logistics routes, port infrastructure, highway and train access. So very, very strong industrial site, Peter.
Yeah, an industrial site, and I guess for background, you're not really a miner per se. You're, as I said in my intro, you're a refiner or converter. So how does this this PFS has been in the wind for a while now? It ticks the boxes. So what does it mean in terms of operating costs, revenue, lithium carbonate production? What are the projections that have been unveiled in this long-awaited pre-feasibility study, Alex?
Yeah, you're right. It's been in the works with the team we have. As we talked about on many occasions, we've got a team that we call the Lithium Dream Team. Obviously, Iggy Tan, Pat Scallon, Dr. Jingwan Liu, John Loxton, and John Sobleski. All these guys have extensive lithium experience, in particular conversion experience, which is very hard to come by outside of China. Now, what we've done is we've grabbed all this expertise and we've developed a model built by operators, which is very important. This is not built by engineers or forecast analysts. This is built by operators who have been there and done it before. What we've seen is an NPV using 8% of 780 million. We've got a payback of around 3.5 years and an EBITDA of around 147 million. So these are very strong financial modeling results. And finally, from an operating cost perspective, we're just coming in just under $4,000 a ton US.
Right. Okay. So you're going to make your money back in 3 years' time, is what you're saying, according to the study.
Yeah, that's right. And once you take into account also the benefit of being or reshoring that supply chain in North America, you know, by the time you take into account spodumene leaving the transatlantic region, going through to China, which is currently processing about 95% of the world's spodumene before making its way back into the battery supply chain in North America, you're looking at, you know, a freight imposition of cost, but also the tariffs of about 25%. So when you take that into account, Peter, the operating costs at Bécancour are actually about 15% cheaper than that of China, once you take into account that logistics and tariff items as well.
Okay, we'll explore that. I guess, you know, in terms of the company moving forward, you know, you've been able to leverage off some strategic decisions undertaken by the Canadian government in more recent years in terms of relying less and less on Chinese involvement, contributions. I guess in layman's terms, it's been a bit of an anti-China stance. How have you been able to leverage off that, and what does this PFS mean for you now to help capitalise on that?
Yeah, it's a huge tailwind. I put it quite simply. The anti-China policy, as you put it, Peter, you know, the Canadian and the US governments don't mince their words when they talk about being a matter of national security. They've, for the last 2 to 3 years now, ordered Chinese firms to divest from Canadian projects and Canadian companies that are focused on critical minerals. So this is a strong indication, right? Words going to actions, but even more so now the US Inflation Reduction Act is taking a very strong stance by not allowing a lot of the companies setting up big projects in US to have access or be eligible for those huge subsidies if they're using Chinese chemicals. So this is a huge, tailwind for us. Obviously, we're an Australian company, Australian expertise setting up in Canada. So from a national security perspective, we tick all of those boxes as well, Peter.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I sort of want to stress this: you're not a miner. You're not sort of digging up. You're not drilling into the ground. You're actually refining and processing. So, how is that a major point of difference compared to the traditional lithium company of the day?
Yeah, there's two items there, Peter. The first one is what we've outlined, for the last probably 12 months is something that we call the lithium conversion gap, right? There's currently no lithium converters in North America, and there's only about 100,000 tons slated for delivery by 2030. Now, based on Department of Energy forecasts and statistics, we're going to need about 850,000 ton of conversion capacity coming into the US, right? So there's a huge shortfall there a shortfall or gap as we call it. So that's number one, right? Very strong supply and demand shift. But secondly, there's a very interesting business case around conversion. Obviously, the Chinese lithium conversion business model has been around for the last 10 years, a very successful merchant refining business, right? And why that's important is because the merchant refinery concept isn't really tied to the lithium price per se. Like a lot of miners and lithium explorers in particular, they're waiting for $30,000, $40,000 for lithium carbonate. Now, we've found a range, something we could call the Goldilocks range for lithium pricing between spodumene and lithium carbonate, in which the project is immediately viable. And the price or the pricing forecast that we've put into our feasibility study is showing a very conservative figure of $1,100 US for SC6 and just a touch under 21,000 for lithium carbonate equivalent.
Does this take in your what you've called your counter-cyclical strategy? Is this an important component of your PFS?
Yeah, it is. With obviously the team that we have, Peter, this is not their first rodeo, right? They've seen this all before. They've seen the cycles, and what we're doing is, without sounding too cliche, we're building through the cycle, right? We're lining up all of our eggs in a row, and we're building now, so then we can make the most of it when all the spodumene volume does come online in the future. And from our expectations and forecasts, there's huge volume coming online in spodumene content in James Bay over the next 4 years.
So I guess one of the burning questions and one of the obvious questions is, where are you going to get your product, your resource from to feed through the refinery?
Yeah, so that's the current discussions that are underway. So we initially targeted to come out with a definitive feasibility study first in December this year. We've been having a lot of discussions over the last 6 months and have come up to a point where we need to start publishing numbers so we can talk in further detail about what the business model looks like. So hence the reason why we've come with the pre-feasibility study early, and this will really underpin all of our discussions moving forward with OEMs, with spodumene miners, but also offtake partners, trading houses. So there's a lot of work in the background at the moment that I obviously can't talk about too much, but there are discussions underway with a lot of the big companies that everyone's heard about.
Yeah, okay. You kind of half answered my next question in terms of the fact that I understand you are negotiating some offtake agreements, but I guess you can't tell us too much more on that at this particular minute, I imagine.
No, not at this stage. But what I will say, Peter, is the beauty of the model that we have is that because we can bring in spodumene via the ship, via the St. Lawrence from the Atlantic Ocean. We've got exposure to spodumene providers all across the transatlantic, right? Whether that be Brazil, Africa, or potentially also Australia. There's all sorts of opportunities for the company outside of James Bay as well.
So obviously the next step is to build the plant. Would be the next significant step, I would imagine. Is there a timeline for that, Alex?
We don't like to give timelines internally. But what I will say is, one thing that probably sets us apart is I've talked about the team. The next probably thing that sort of goes in leapfrogs or dovetails into this sort of question, Peter, is around the technology, right? Our team has built the Jiangsu lithium carbonate plant for Galaxy back in the day. The Jiangsu plant, it's remained a benchmark in China. It's a semi-continuous plant, semi-autonomous plant, fully continuous Western style plant. So all we're doing is grabbing that very proven design and then throwing that into Quebec, right? So in terms of timelines, we've actually been there and done it before for this exact same design. So in terms of our level of confidence, not only on the feasibility study, but our timelines and likely commissioning timelines, we're very confident.
I've got to be honest with you, Alex. During the course of our conversation, our chat so far, I wonder why more companies aren't what you in part is doing is that catering for that downstream processing aspect. So why can't we, given WA is meant to be a lithium haven, why wouldn't companies be inclined to do what you're doing here in WA, given we're the lithium valley of the south, so to speak? Is it purely all about costs?
It's also technically challenging, right? So costs. The one beautiful thing about Quebec is they've got hydroelectricity, so green, cheap electricity or energy, about 2.6 cents a kilowatt. Now you compare that to Western Australia, it's maybe a factor of 8 times less than what you could probably pay in WA. So that is a huge factor in Quebec being the potential centre of conversion for the transatlantic. But really it comes down to technical risk, right? A lot of, as I've said before, that 95% of the world's spodumene is converted in China. And that black box is quite hard to sort of squeeze any information from. There's not many companies that really understand the conversion technology. Even the big corporates, Peter, we've seen in WA being sort of Tianqi and Albemarle, they've had trouble of replicating Chinese plants in the Australian environment. Now, from our assessment, based on obviously the team that we have on hand, there's huge operational integration issues, but also design flaws. Bringing that Western operation or operational techniques into the Australian working environment. So it's a complex myriad of challenges. One that we've tried to outline within our pre-feasibility study without going into too much depth.
Okay. Well, Alex, Lithium Universe isn't your traditional miner, so to speak, as I've already touched on a few times. It's a converter and refiner, closing that gap. Why would a company like Lithium Universe be more palatable and attractive to investors compared to the traditional dig up your earth miner?
The business case, what I alluded to earlier, Peter, is that the lithium price itself does not play a huge role in the business model. We are obviously part of the larger supply chain on a take or pay conversion model, right? So we're not exposed to the large volatility movements and won't be exposed to that large volatility movements in the future once we're online. So it's all about, I suppose, not only that, but the expansion potential. We've got a design ready to go, and we have the ability to geographically cookie cutter that across North America and potentially other places in the world. So there's also a huge expansion potential with the company.
Cookie cutter, maybe when prices go get cheaper in Western Australia, maybe you can apply the same modelling here, perhaps one day, Alex. He's hoping.
Well, maybe, mate, if the right party comes to the table.
I see you're touching on politics now. All right, look, Alex, it's exciting days ahead, no doubt. Congratulations on the announcement and the pre-feasibility study. Definitely a major milestone and one step closer to, I guess, reality, so to speak. We appreciate your time on Small Caps today, and we look forward to hearing more exciting news coming from your corner soon. So do keep in touch.
Thanks, Peter.